Well, we say good morning. Good morning to Grant Hill, 7-time NBA All-Star, works for Turner Sports, covering the NBA and the NCAA, 2-time NCAA champ at Duke. Grant, how are you today, bud?
Hey, Dan, I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing great. The story you'll tell about Mike Krzyzewski to your grandkids is what?
He had a difficult last name to spell.
That's it.
No, forgive me. It took me till my junior year to learn how to spell it. No, just an incredible coach. Obviously, one of the great coaches in
But is there a story where you got yelled at, or that he started crying, or something that stands out? You don't want to say to your grandkids, he was a great coach. You go, hey, you will not believe this. Here's the story.
Yeah, I mean, look, I got yelled at frequently, particularly early on, during my time there. I think Coach K set the tone for me in my 4 years there at Duke in our very first meeting my freshman year. First day of school, first time the entire team assembles together. And he established the vision for that team in that year by putting the national champions on the board in the locker room. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm looking around the locker room, and I'm like, this team's not good enough to beat UNLV. That's the first thing going through my mind. I mean, the team had lost three seniors from a championship or from a team the year before. You had a young roster. Vegas was so dominant in the finals against Duke the year before, returned everybody. But Coach K said it in a way that by the end of that conversation, I believed. And I think all of us in that locker room believed. Now, we didn't believe we were championship material at that moment, but if we followed his plan, if we bought in, if we played for one another, if we embodied what Duke basketball is all about, that when it's all said and done, we'd have a chance to be champions, and we were. And so his ability to sell, his ability to get you to buy in is really his genius, Dan.
And it's a farewell tour. It's going to be strange. I don't know how it's going to be for you. You tune in and watch Duke basketball, and, you're watching Coach K. But John Shire taking over, and it'll be interesting. Interesting to see.
It'll be very interesting. Obviously a lot of fanfare, farewell tour. I mean, everywhere he goes, it'll be the last time. Last time in Charlottesville, last time at Clemson, last time, going to Carolina. And what's crazy is I would imagine some of these schools might even celebrate him or honor him in some form or fashion. Can you imagine him getting honored in Chapel Hill?
Oh, they're absolutely going to honor him. They're going to be glad he's gone. Right?
You might be right about that. You might be right.
Even
about
in
that.
Carolina, probably so. We spent a lot of time talking about the Steelers game with the Bears last night. And, I know you got a football background with your father, but it's just these run-ins you have with officials. Like, how many times would you feel like something was personal with an official, or he was trying to get you or didn't like you? How often would that happen?
It didn't happen much. I mean, you go back in the 90s in the NBA, the officials, you could talk to them, you could have a discussion with them. There was a respect they commanded. You didn't always see eye to eye. Sometimes you got technicals, but, I think we've moved away from that in some respects in all sports, not just in the NBA, but in NFL and in various sports. And I think because of the TV coverage and the banter back and forth, the interactions, they've tried to limit that. And I think sometimes, players need to be able to discuss things with officials and in the moment, the heat of the battle. We've changed the rules significantly. But back in the day, yeah, look, I mean, there were times where, I messed up. I was wrong. I shouldn't have yelled at you. I've even been tossed. I'm not proud of that back in the day. But, it certainly seems like we've changed, and we don't permit the interaction between players and officials. And the rules sometimes can be very, very rigid. And certainly that was, on display last night in that football game, which was very controversial down the stretch.
I wonder how your career would have turned out if you were going to Duke now and you were a one and done, because you probably would have been a one and done. Coach K would have said, what are you doing? Get out of here. How do you think your career would have been if you'd gone in as a freshman instead of after your senior year?
It's a great question. I don't think I would have been as connected to Duke and maybe just college basketball like I am now. I think the 4 years that we played in the early '90s, whether you liked Duke or you despised Duke, you saw Duke, and people I think recall and remember those, and still 25, 30 years later, there's still documentaries and books and still in people's memories of those teams and those years. And it's hard to sort of capture that just in 1 year, I think, for some of these guys. Now, I think with the new name, image, and likeness, I would have relied less on Janet and Calvin as a freshman. That's for sure. I would have, instead of stretching $20 for 2 weeks, I would have possibly had more to deal with.
What do you think you would have made? Name, image, and likeness your freshman year.
Oh man, I think the player I was as a freshman in today's environment with Duke and the hype and the social media, I'd say at a minimum, and I'm going to be real conservative, I'd say six figures.
Okay. And what would Leitner have gotten?
Oh yeah, Leitner. Look, I'm gonna tell you something. Leitner was so big. I mean, it was like I was the bass player for a pop star. I mean, Leitner was larger than life. Look, Leitner was one of People Magazine's 50 most beautiful people his senior year. I mean, come on now. The trash talking both ways with that was unreal. But Leitner was larger than life, was certainly a celebrity on campus. Everyone loved him. Sometimes we hated him, but he was certainly a star. And he would have, seven figures, maybe eight figures. I mean, he was that big. I mean, Dan, he had Stephen King. Like Stephen King, which is kind of odd, but Stephen King would come down to Durham and hang out with Christian Laettner.
Wait, so the writer Stephen King would hang out with Laettner?
I mean, one day I remember going over to his apartment on an off day, and like Stephen King is in his in his living room, and this is like early his senior year. And so, I mean, like that doesn't happen, and didn't happen much back then and doesn't happen now. But he was, quite a player, delivered when it mattered most, and certainly was big time back in the day. Would have made a lot of money.
Maybe Stephen King was getting inspiration for somebody, a bad guy in his book. Like, let me get somebody who's really feared and hated. Hey, Christian, can I come down and talk to you for a little while?
Hey, no comment. Right?
He's Grant Hill joining us, 7-time NBA All-Star, 2-time NCAA champ at Duke. How would you cover Steph Curry?
Wow. Sometimes the best defense is good offense. And I think, wear him out on the other end, try to pick up 2 fouls. But, how he has played this year, after, being hurt 2 years ago, coming back, having a fantastic season, and now his play, MVP discussion, what he did last night to my Atlanta Hawks, I mean, just it was legendary and painful as a Hawk fan and owner to watch, but just beautiful in terms of his game. Back to that 2015, 2016 form that we saw. I thought he really really sacrificed his game for Kevin Durant, and rightfully so. Kevin Durant, a great player, new environment. I think Steph Curry, people don't appreciate how he went out of his way, I believe, to make Durant feel comfortable. And then he got hurt once Durant left. But he's back to that sort of pre-Durant 2015 form. And, Golden State, fun and exciting to watch. And look, we all were saying in the preseason, if they can just hold it together in the Western Conference until Clay comes back, wow, this team would be scary. But you know what? They're scary right now.
Yeah, I know.
And it's unimaginable to think what they'll be once they get Klay Thompson back to form.
But, when you see, and J.J. Redick was as pure a college shooter as I've ever seen. He was a wonderful, he made shots and the net didn't move. But is anybody compared to Steph Curry that you remember that as far as that good a shooter?
I had the good fortune of playing with Steve Nash in Phoenix. And at the time, I thought Steve Nash was the best shooting point guard in the history of the NBA. Historically, was a 50, 40, 90 guy, 50% from the field, 40% from the three-point line, 90% from the free throw line. At the time, we had not seen a point guard who shot the ball as well as Steve. Now, he was also a great passer and was at times a reluctant shooter. But Steph has just taken it to a whole nother level with his shooting, with his range, with the volume of shots that he takes. Really has, changed the game. Has been a transformational guy. I think of, you think of, Lou Alcindor way back in the day and how he changed the game and widened the lane, outlawed the dunk. You think of Michael Jordan during his heyday, and influence and how he changed the game also off the court culturally. But then Steph Curry, just like kind of goofy, silly looking, looks like a kid out there, has become the most dangerous player in the NBA, but also has really transformed and embraced and ushered in this new era of shooting from long range. But no one can replicate or duplicate what he's done. And I'm not sure we'll see a guy like him for quite some time.
How concerned would you be if you're a Laker fan right now? LeBron's out for a month, the abdominal strain. Russell Westbrook doesn't seem like the right fit there. It's early, but is this going to be the same pattern that we see even when LeBron comes back?
I called that game last night. The Lakers played against Charlotte, and they escaped with a win. The Lakers there in overtime, and it shouldn't have come to that. This team is still trying to figure itself out, as you said. At times it looks a little disjointed. The pieces you question, do they all fit? Now, in fairness, you have to get LeBron back and Trevor Ariza and Taylor Horton-Tucker and an assortment of Kendrick Nunn. So it's hard to fully evaluate this team and this roster right now. But, the abdominal strain is something that LeBron has to be very, very careful with. That's something that can linger for an entire season if you're not, not smart about how you treat it. But this team, it's a big question mark, and the expectation in LA, the expectation with any LeBron James team is to win a championship. But I'm not in love with this roster. I'm not in love with the pieces and how they fit. We still have time to figure it out. I will say, though, I'll give credit, and I got to give credit to him and how he played last night and how he's been all season. The one consistent theme has been Carmelo.
Yeah.
Carmelo Anthony has really embraced this off-the-bench six-man role, really shooting the ball efficiently from the field. Had, I think, 29 points last night, 6 3-pointers made. So he's been the one sort of shining, bright spot for the team here. But I'm not sure. I really, the role players, the wing guys, the shooters, the ingredients necessary, I think, to have success with LeBron. I'm not a big fan of this roster. And in the Western Conference, you get behind too far, it's a lot to make up for. They don't want to be in the spot they were in last year playing in the play-in game.
Yeah.
But they very well could find themselves right back there at the end of the season.
I know you're taking part in a new initiative, Start Strong. Tell the audience what that's about.
Yeah, no, thank you, Dan. And, I partnered with Dendreon Pharmaceuticals to have a Start Strong campaign for prostate cancer patients. And so, what's interesting, prostate cancer, hits all men, but disproportionately impacts African-American men. African-American men are twice as likely to be diagnosed and 2.5 times more likely to die from prostate cancer. So raising the awareness, getting people of color in the African-American community to go, to get checked, to get screened. If you find it early, it can be treated and cure, and you can have, go on with a successful life. But typically in our community, in the African-American community, we don't like to go to the doctor. We don't like to go and get checked. And oftentimes we find out and it's too late. So this Start Strong campaign is really just about game planning, preparing as you would as a team in the NBA or the NFL with your health, taking ownership. As you know, Dan, I've had loads of injury issues throughout my career, but I understand the importance of taking ownership, taking control. And together with Dendreon Pharmaceuticals, we're encouraging all men but particularly African American men, to do the same. So you can go to a great website, so much information at www.startstrong.us. And I just appreciate, Dan, you give me an opportunity to talk about it.
Always great to see you, buddy. Thank you for joining us, Grant.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
That's Grant Hill, Turner Sports, NBA, NCAA analyst, 7-time All-Star, 2-time champ at Duke.